The mansion had a reputation, 23 maids in 18 months. None lasted more than 3 weeks. They all said the same thing, she breaks you. But Naomi walked through those golden gates anyway, knowing she couldn't afford to leave. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. They said no maid ever lasted in that house. Not one. The taxi driver had given Naomi a strange look when she told him the address, number 7 Banana Island Estate. His eyes had flicked to her worn suitcase, her faded dress, the careful way she counted out exact change from a tied cloth purse. You sure about this, madam? He'd asked. She was sure about nothing except that her daughter had 48 hours before the hospital stopped treatment. Deborah's heart was failing, and hope was expensive. The agency had warned her too, 3 different women, all saying the same thing. Madam Rose is difficult. That house has a darkness in it. Please, sister. Find somewhere else. But somewhere else didn't pay $2,000 a month with accommodation. Somewhere else wouldn't cover Deborah's medication while Naomi saved for the surgery her daughter desperately needed. So Naomi had signed the papers, said a prayer, and gotten in that taxi. The mansion beyond was something from a fever dream, 3 stories of pristine white architecture, glass walls that reflected the lagoon, manicured gardens where each blade of grass seemed individually placed. A fountain in the circular driveway featured bronze angels, water cascading from their outstretched hands. Everything screamed wealth, power, perfection. Everything except the eyes of the security guard who opened the gate. New maid? He asked, though it wasn't really a question. He looked at her with something like pity. 4th one this month. God be with you. The front door opened before Naomi could knock. A woman in her 50s stood there, slim and elegant in a gray uniform that somehow looked regal. Her eyes were kind but weary, carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd witnessed too much. I'm Grace, she said quietly, ushering Naomi inside. Head of housekeeping. Come, let me show you to your quarters before. Grace. The voice sliced through the air like a whip crack. Is that the new girl? Naomi felt Grace stiffen beside her. They both turned toward the grand staircase where a woman descended like a storm-given human form. Madame Rose was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful, cold, untouchable, maintained. She couldn't have been more than 35, but her eyes held something ancient and cruel. Her skin was flawless, her bone structure sharp enough to cut, her designer dress flowing like liquid silk. Diamond studs caught the light from the chandelier above. Everything about her was curated, controlled, perfect. Except for the smile. The smile belonged to something that enjoyed suffering. So you're the replacement, Rose said, circling Naomi slowly. Her heels clicked against marble like a countdown. They get more desperate each time. Look at this dress. Is this what passes for presentable now? Naomi kept her eyes lowered, her hands clasped. She'd learned long ago that silence was armor. I asked you a question. Rose's voice dropped to something soft and deadly. Are you deaf as well as poorly dressed? No, ma'am. No, ma'am, Rose mimicked, her tone mocking. How wonderfully subservient. Tell me, what makes you think you'll last here when 23 women before you couldn't manage 3 weeks? 23. The numbers sat heavy in the air. I need this job, ma'am, Naomi said quietly. I'll work hard. Oh, they all work hard. They all need the job. Rose reached out, lifting a strand of Naomi's hair between manicured fingers like she was examining something contaminated. But this house has standards. I have standards. And women like you, simple, village women with your simple, village problems, you always break. She released Naomi's hair with a flick of disgust. Grace, get her into proper uniform. She starts immediately. The master bathroom needs deep cleaning, on your hands and knees, not with a mop. I want to see my reflection in those tiles. And Naomi? Rose leaned close, her perfume expensive and suffocating. When you quit, and you will quit, don't bother asking for a reference. She swept away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and barely contained cruelty. Grace's hand found Naomi's elbow, gently guiding her toward the service stairs. They climbed in silence until they reached a narrow hallway where the opulence of the main house gave way to simple practicality. Your room, Grace said, opening a door to a small but clean space. Single bed, wardrobe, a tiny window overlooking the garden. The uniform is in the closet. I'll give you 10 minutes, then I'll show you the supplies. Grace, Naomi said softly. What happened to the others? Grace's kind face hardened with remembered pain. She finds what hurts you most, then she presses on it until you can't take any more. The last girl, Chioma, she had a mother in the hospital. Madame Rose made her work 20-hour days, called her constantly on her off hours, made it impossible for her to visit. Chioma lasted 11 days before she had a breakdown. And before that? Fatima, who was supporting her younger siblings. Rose would accidentally break expensive items, then dock it from her pay. Left owing more than she earned. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. The one before that, Blessing, made the mistake of being pretty. Rose accused her of trying to seduce Mr. Adeyemi, her husband, and humiliated her so badly that Blessing left crying in the middle of the night. Why do you stay? Naomi asked. Grace's eyes held ancient sadness. I've been here 12 years. I'm 56. Who else would hire me at this salary? I have 3 grandchildren I'm raising alone. So I keep my head down, do my work, and pray each night that tomorrow she'll be in a better mood. She touched Naomi's shoulder gently. But you're young. You have options. If it gets too bad. I have a daughter, Naomi said. She's 6. Her heart is failing. The surgery costs $3.5 million. I have $2,000 saved. Understanding passed between them, the understanding of mothers who would endure anything for their children. Then I'll teach you survival, Grace said. Rule 1. Never react. She feeds on emotion, tears, anger, fear. Give her nothing. The master bathroom was a cathedral to excess, Italian marble, a bathtub that could fit 4 people, a shower with 17 different settings, gold fixtures that probably cost more than Naomi would earn in a year. It was also, despite appearing clean, supposedly in need of deep cleaning. Naomi understood immediately. This wasn't about cleanliness. This was about submission. She tied her headscarf tighter, got on her hands and knees, and began to scrub tiles that were already spotless. 30 minutes later, heels clicked on marble. Did I tell you to use that brush? Rose's voice came from behind her. That's for the toilet. You're using the toilet brush on my floor. Naomi looked down at the brush in her hand, clearly labeled General Purpose on the handle. She set it down carefully and reached for another. Don't bother. You've already contaminated everything. Start over. All of it. 3 hours. The bathroom took 3 hours of scrubbing before Rose declared it barely acceptable. By then, Naomi's knees were screaming, her hands were raw, and her back felt like it might snap. Kitchen next, Rose said. There's a dinner party tonight. 16 guests. You'll help Grace with prep, then service, then cleanup. We start in 40 minutes. Naomi didn't eat. There was no time. She moved through the kitchen like a shadow, chopping vegetables with Grace, preparing appetizers, arranging champagne flutes. The other staff members, 2 young men in service uniforms, a cook named Mamankechi, all moved with the same careful silence, like people navigating a minefield. When the guests arrived, Naomi understood another dimension of her trial. She was to serve while being invisible, to anticipate needs without being noticed, to refill glasses, remove plates, adjust lighting, all while Rose watched her like a hawk studying prey. You there, Rose called out during the main course, using the universal dismissive term that meant servant. This wine is too warm. Bring a fresh bottle, properly chilled. Naomi nodded, moved toward the wine cellar. Not that way, are you stupid? The cellar is downstairs, to the left. How can you not know your way around after a full day? A full day spent scrubbing one bathroom and preparing dinner. But Naomi bit her tongue, corrected course, retrieved the wine. By the time she returned, Rose had manufactured a new complaint. This is a Bordeaux. I asked for Burgundy. Do you not understand French? Mamankechi, safe in the kitchen, later whispered to Naomi. She asked for Bordeaux. I heard her. She's rewriting reality to make you look incompetent. The dinner party ended at midnight. Cleanup took until 2 a.m. When Naomi finally climbed the stairs to her small room, every muscle in her body was screaming. She had been awake for 22 hours straight. She sat on her bed, pulled out her phone, and looked at the photo she kept as her wallpaper, Deborah, smiling despite the hospital gown, despite the tubes, despite everything. Her daughter's eyes held more strength than most adults Naomi knew. Mama's going to make it, she whispered to the photo. Just hold on, baby. Mama's going to make it. A text from the hospital glowed on the screen. Payment due in 48 hours for continued treatment. $400. Naomi calculated quickly. First paycheck wouldn't come for 2 weeks. She had $100 left in her account. She didn't cry. Couldn't afford to. Instead, she set her alarm for 5 a.m., her shift started at 5:30, and lay down in her uniform because undressing felt like too much effort. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow might be easier. But somewhere deep down in the place where truth lived, she knew better. Tomorrow, Madame Rose would be worse. They always were. By day 5, Naomi understood that Madame Rose's cruelty had patterns, rhythms, an almost artistic structure. Mornings were for impossible tasks. Polish every window in the house before breakfast, reorganize the linen closet using a system Rose explained once and expected remembered perfectly, handwash delicate laundry in water that was too hot or too cold, depending on her mood. Afternoons were for public humiliation. Rose's friends would visit, elegant women in designer clothes who sipped tea and watched the help like they were a documentary about lesser species. And Rose would perform. Naomi, show Mrs. Okafor how you fold napkins. Oh, you've forgotten again? I showed you yesterday. Are you mentally slow? Bring out the refreshments. Not like that. Have you never served before? Where exactly did you work? A roadside buka? The friends would laugh, delicate laughs behind manicured hands, and Naomi would feel their eyes assessing, judging, dismissing her humanity one glance at a time. Evenings were for isolation. While other staff members were released to their rooms by 8 p.m., Rose found reasons to keep Naomi working. A stain on a cushion that didn't exist. Furniture that needed rearranging. Tasks that served no purpose except to deprive Naomi of rest, of phone calls to her daughter, of any semblance of a life beyond servitude. But Naomi didn't break. She moved through each day like water. Fluid, adaptable, impossible to shatter. When Rose screamed, Naomi's face remained calm. When Rose humiliated her, Naomi's voice stayed steady. When Rose invented failures and deducted pay, Naomi simply asked, "How can I improve, ma'am?" And it was driving Rose insane. Grace noticed it first. "She's getting worse," she whispered to Naomi on day 8 as they prepared breakfast in the pre-dawn darkness. Usually by now, the new girl has either quit or given her some satisfaction. Tears, anger, something. But you're like a stone in her shoe. She can't get comfortable. Good, Naomi said quietly, whisking eggs with mechanical precision. No, not good. Grace's voice held warning. When she can't break you the usual way, she escalates. The escalation came that afternoon. Naomi was cleaning the guest bathroom on the second floor when Rose entered, trailed by 2 of her friends, Mrs. Okafor and a younger woman named Temi who always seemed particularly entertained by Rose's cruelty. "Naomi, come here," Rose commanded. Naomi set down her cleaning supplies and approached, hands clasped, eyes respectfully lowered. "My friends and I have been discussing poverty," Rose said, her tone conversational but edged with venom. "The psychology of it. Mrs. Okafor believes it's primarily circumstantial, bad luck, poor family planning. But I have a different theory. I believe poverty is, at its core, a failure of character." Temi giggled. Mrs. Okafor looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "What do you think, Naomi?" Rose continued. "After all, you're our resident expert on being poor. Is your poverty because of circumstances? Or because you're fundamentally lacking?" The words were designed to wound. Naomi felt them hit, felt the sharp edges trying to find purchase in her dignity. But she thought of Deborah, of her daughter's fight, her daughter's courage, and that gave her armor. "I think," Naomi said carefully, "that poverty is complicated, ma'am. And that people in difficult circumstances work very hard, often harder than they would need to in easier situations." "How diplomatic," Rose sneered. "How safe? Tell me, this hard work you speak of, has it gotten you anywhere? Or are you still scrubbing other people's toilets?" "I'm providing for my daughter, ma'am." "That's somewhere." Something flickered in Rose's eyes, surprise, maybe at the quiet dignity in Naomi's response. But it was quickly replaced by something darker. "Your daughter," Rose said slowly. "The sick one. Grace mentioned that. What's wrong with her exactly?" Warning bells rang in Naomi's head. "Don't give her ammunition. Don't give her leverage. She has a heart condition, ma'am." "How expensive," Rose said, and her friends shifted uncomfortably because even they could feel the approaching cruelty. "Must be stressful working here while your child suffers. Do you think about her when you're scrubbing floors? Do you imagine her dying while you're on your hands and knees?" Mrs. Okafor gasped softly. Rose, that's honest. Rose snapped at her friend. I'm being honest. Something no one else in this world is willing to be. Everyone tiptoes around poverty and suffering like it's sacred, but it's not. It's just failure. She turned back to Naomi, and her beautiful face was transformed by something ugly and desperate. Tell me, Naomi, when your daughter dies because you couldn't save her, and she will die, we both know you'll never earn enough. Will you finally break? Or will you maintain this infuriating calm? The words were meant to destroy. They were chosen with surgical precision to find the deepest wound and pour acid into it. Naomi felt them hit, felt them tear, felt the image of Deborah, her baby, her fighter, her reason for breathing, and the unbearable thought of losing her. But she didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't give Rose what she wanted. Instead, she looked up and met Rose's eyes directly for the first time. I'll keep working, ma'am, she said quietly. For as long as she's fighting, I'll keep fighting. The room went silent. Even Rose seemed stunned by the simple power of that statement. Then her face contorted with rage. Get out, she hissed. Get out of my sight. And consider this month's pay docked by $300 for insubordination. Naomi left, but she felt the weight of what had just happened. She'd been visible. She'd been human. And Rose couldn't tolerate it. That night, Mama Nkechi found Naomi sitting alone in the service kitchen long after her shift ended, staring at her phone. She went too far today, Mama said gently, settling her considerable frame into the chair across from Naomi. The cook was a woman of 60, built like a fortress, with eyes that had seen everything and forgiven most of it. She's testing, Naomi said softly. No, child. She's escalating. When she brought up your daughter like that. Mama shook her head. I've been in this house 3 years. I've seen her break women for less than what you're doing. What am I doing? Surviving. And worse, surviving with dignity. She can't stand it. Mama reached across and squeezed Naomi's hand. Grace told us about your little girl. We all respect what you're doing. But you need to know, Rose doesn't stop. She finds what you love most and she destroys it, just to prove she can. Then she'll be disappointed, Naomi said. Because Deborah is in a hospital in Surelier, and Rose can't reach her there. But Naomi was wrong. Rose didn't need to reach Deborah. She just needed to make it impossible for Naomi to reach her. The campaign started the next morning. Rose began calling for Naomi at all hours. 2 a.m. to fix a leaking faucet that wasn't leaking, 4 a.m. because she heard a noise, 5 a.m. for tea she never drank. Sleep became a luxury Naomi couldn't afford. During the day, tasks multiplied. Clean all 16 rooms. Polish every surface. Handwash every item in 3 closets of clothing. Reorganize the pantry. Reclean the kitchen because a single spot was missed. And through it all, Rose would appear at random intervals, watching with those cold, beautiful eyes, waiting for Naomi to crack. On day 12, Naomi called the hospital during her 10-minute lunch break. Her hands shook as she dialed, exhaustion making even simple movements difficult. Mrs. Naomi, the nurse said, her voice professional but kind. We've been trying to reach you. Deborah is asking for you. She's scared. The other children's mothers visit every day, and she doesn't understand. Tell her I love her, Naomi said, her voice breaking for the first time. Tell her Mama is working hard so she can come home healthy. Tell her. The phone was snatched from her hand. Rose stood there, holding Naomi's phone like it was contaminated. Are you on a personal call during work hours? It was my lunch break, ma'am. Your lunch break. Rose's smile was venomous. You don't get breaks until your work is satisfactory. And your work is never satisfactory. This phone is a distraction. Ma'am, please. You'll get it back at the end of the month, Rose said, slipping the phone into her pocket. Maybe by then you'll have learned to prioritize your responsibilities. It was the cruelest blow yet. Naomi stood there, watching her only connection to Deborah disappear into Rose's designer dress, and felt something in her chest constrict. But she didn't beg, didn't fight, just nodded slowly and said, Yes, ma'am. Rose looked almost disappointed. That evening, as Naomi scrubbed the already spotless foyer floor on her hands and knees, she heard Rose on the phone in the adjacent parlor. Her voice carried, deliberately loud enough for Naomi to hear. Yes, that's right. Naomi Okafor. She's my employee and I need to verify. Oh, she said she'd visit today? Well, she lied. She's been here all day working. No, you shouldn't make exceptions. I understand the child is distressed, but discipline starts young. You're welcome. Rose appeared in the doorway, looking down at Naomi with something like satisfaction. That was your daughter's hospital. Apparently, she's been acting out, asking for you constantly. They wanted to know when you'd visit. I told them you were too busy with your job. She paused. Because you are, aren't you? Naomi's hands stilled on the wet floor. She felt something inside her stretch to its breaking point, that thin wire of control she'd maintained for 12 days straight. I haven't had a day off yet, ma'am, she said carefully. Day off? Rose laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You think you've earned a day off? After all your mistakes? After your constant inadequacies? You'll get a day off when I decide you're worth one. The contract says 1 day off per week. The contract, Rose interrupted, her voice dropping to something deadly, says you work for me. And what I say goes. Or you can leave. Right now. Walk out that door, run to your dying daughter, and figure out how you'll pay for her medicine tomorrow. It was the ultimate trap. Stay and be cut off from Deborah. Leave and lose the income that was keeping Deborah alive. Naomi looked down at her reflection in the wet marble floor. She looked like a ghost, exhausted, wrung out, barely human. She thought of her daughter, alone in that hospital, asking for her. She thought of the bills, the surgery, the impossible mathematics of survival. She thought of all the women who had broken in this house before her. Then she picked up her scrub brush and continued cleaning. Good choice, Rose said softly and walked away. But Grace, watching from the service hallway, saw something in Naomi's eyes that Rose had missed. Not submission. Not surrender. Resolve. Somewhere in that moment of ultimate cruelty, something had crystallized in Naomi. She would survive this. Not because she was strong, but because Deborah needed her to be. And if surviving meant enduring a monster, then she would endure. Day after day after day. Until something broke. And eventually, something would. On day 17, Naomi's body started to fail her. She'd lost 8 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. Her hands trembled constantly from exhaustion. When she closed her eyes, even for a moment, she saw Deborah's face, not smiling like in her wallpaper photo, but scared, alone, calling for a mother who couldn't come. Rose had kept her phone. Had denied her every day off. Had manufactured reasons to keep Naomi working until midnight, then waking her at 4 a.m. Sleep had become a 4-hour luxury if she was lucky, 2 hours if she wasn't. The other staff members tried to help. Grace would sneak Naomi extra food. Mom and Ketchy would accidentally assign her easier tasks when Rose wasn't watching. The security guard, Joseph, had even offered to let her use his phone to call the hospital. But Rose had anticipated everything. She'd called the hospital and left strict instructions. No phone calls to Naomi except in emergencies. She told the staff that anyone caught coddling the new maid would be fired. She'd created an environment where Naomi's isolation was absolute. And still, Naomi didn't break. It was driving Rose to madness. Grace saw it first, the way Rose would watch Naomi with something like confusion mixed with rage. The way she'd manufacture increasingly creative cruelties, only to find that Naomi absorbed them like a sponge absorbing water. Present, but unchanged. She's unraveling, Grace whispered to Mama and Ketchy one afternoon. I've never seen her like this. Usually by now, she's moved on to the next target. But Naomi is different. The crisis came on a Tuesday afternoon. Naomi was in the master suite, changing the bedsheets according to Rose's exacting specifications, hospital corners, no wrinkles, pillows fluffed to precise angles. She moved like an automaton, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought had become too exhausting. She didn't hear Rose enter until the woman spoke directly behind her. You're doing it wrong. Naomi turned slowly. Rose stood in the doorway, still in her yoga clothes from her morning session with her personal trainer. Her skin glowed with health and expensive skincare. Her eyes glittered with something manic. Ma'am? The sheets. You're doing them wrong. Again. Rose moved forward with predatory grace. How many times do I need to show you? Are you mentally deficient? I'm following the instructions you gave me, ma'am. Don't talk back. Rose's voice cracked like a whip. Strip the bed. Do it again. Naomi had remade this bed 6 times already that morning. 6 times, and each time Rose had found a new fault. Too loose, too tight, wrong pillows, wrong angle. But she reached for the sheets anyway, preparing to start again. Rose grabbed her wrist. The grip was hard enough to bruise. Naomi looked up, startled, and found Rose's face inches from hers, beautiful and twisted with something that looked like desperation. Why won't you cry? Rose hissed. Why won't you scream at me? Fight back? Quit? Why are you still here? The question hung between them, and Naomi realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't about the sheets. Had never been about the sheets. This was about something deeper, something broken in Rose that needed Naomi to break too. I'm here because I need to be, ma'am, Naomi said quietly. For your daughter, Rose sneered, but there was something desperate in her voice. For your sick, dying daughter. Well, let me tell you something about children. Their weaknesses. Their chains. They make you vulnerable to people like me. She's not a weakness, Naomi said. She's my strength. Rose's grip tightened painfully. Your strength? You're exhausted. You're failing. You haven't seen her in 17 days. Some strength. I'm still here. Barely. Rose released Naomi's wrist and shoved her hard. Naomi stumbled backward, catching herself on the bedpost. You're a ghost. You're nothing. And still you stand there with that infuriating calm, like none of this touches you. It touches me, Naomi said, and for the first time, let some of the exhaustion show in her voice. Every second touches me. But I can't afford to fall apart. So I don't. Rose stared at her, breathing hard, and something shifted in her expression. Something vulnerable flickered across her face before her rage slammed back into place. Get out, she said, her voice shaking. Get to the kitchen. Clean the refrigerator. I want every item removed, every shelf scrubbed, everything organized by expiration date. You have 2 hours. It was an impossible task. The refrigerator was enormous, packed with a week's worth of groceries. But Naomi nodded and left, feeling Rose's eyes boring into her back. In the kitchen, Mama Nkechi took one look at Naomi's face and guided her to a chair. Sit, the older woman commanded. Just for 5 minutes. Sit. Naomi collapsed into the chair, and the room spun. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. There'd been no time, no energy. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. I can't do this, she whispered, and was horrified to hear the words come out. I can't. Yes, you can, Mama said firmly, pressing a glass of cold water into Naomi's hands. You've been doing it for 17 days. You can do one more. For what? So she can torture me tomorrow? So my daughter can grow up thinking her mother abandoned her? Naomi's voice cracked. I haven't spoken to Deborah in more than 2 weeks. She's 6 years old, she's scared, and I'm here cleaning refrigerators. You're here keeping her alive, Mama interrupted. That's what you're doing. And I know it doesn't feel like enough, but it is. Naomi pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to hold back tears that would cost her more than she could afford. Because if she started crying now, she might never stop. A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Rose stood there, face pale, watching them. How long she'd been standing there, neither of them knew. But something in her expression had changed. The manic rage was gone, replaced by something Naomi couldn't quite read. The refrigerator, Rose said, but her voice was flat, mechanical. 2 hours. She left. Naomi got up, moved to the refrigerator, began the impossible task. Her body moved on autopilot while her mind drifted to Deborah. She imagined her daughter in that hospital bed, asking the nurses when Mama would visit. Imagined her small face trying to be brave, trying not to cry. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered to the refrigerator shelves. Mama's so sorry. The work took 4 hours, not 2. By the time Naomi finished, her back was screaming, and the kitchen clock showed 11 p.m. She'd been working for 18 hours straight. She climbed the stairs to her room like an old woman, each step a mountain. In her small room, she collapsed onto her bed still in her uniform, too exhausted even to remove her headscarf. Sleep came like drowning. She woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of crying. For a confused moment, she thought it was Deborah. Shot upright, heart pounding, ready to run to her daughter. Then reality crashed back. She was in the mansion, Deborah was miles away, and the crying was coming from somewhere in the house. Naomi should have ignored it. Should have rolled over and stolen what little sleep she could. But something about the sound, raw, broken, utterly human, pulled her out of bed. She followed the sound down the hallway, down the stairs, to the second-floor landing. And there, in the shadows beneath an abstract painting that probably cost more than a car, sat Madame Rose. She was on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, still in her designer dress from dinner. Her perfect hair was disheveled. Her face was streaked with makeup and tears. She looked nothing like the poised, cruel woman who ruled this house with an iron fist. She looked like someone breaking. Naomi should have left. Should have returned to her room and pretended she'd seen nothing. But something stopped her. Maybe exhaustion had stripped away her sense of self-preservation, or maybe she'd simply seen too much suffering to walk away from more. She sat down on the floor, a respectful distance away, and waited. Rose looked up, startled. For a moment, she seemed ready to snap back into her cruel persona, to yell, to demean, to reassert control. But something in Naomi's calm presence, or maybe something in her own breaking point, stopped her. "Why are you here?" Rose asked, her voice hoarse from crying. "I heard you. You should have stayed in your room." "Probably," Naomi agreed. They sat in silence. Minutes passed. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 2:30. Finally, Rose spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know what it's like to be hated?" Naomi considered the question. "I know what it's like to be dismissed. To be invisible." "No." Rose shook her head. "I mean really hated. By people who are supposed to love you. By people who—" She trailed off, laughed bitterly. "Why am I telling you this?" "Because it's 2:30 in the morning, and I'm the only one here," Naomi said simply. Rose wiped her face roughly, smearing expensive makeup. "I was a maid," she said abruptly. "Did you know that? 15 years ago, I was you. Worked for a family in Ikoy. The wife she was everything I'm now. Everything I swore I'd never become." Naomi stayed silent, letting the confession unfold. "She broke me," Rose continued, her voice distant. "Every single day, she broke me. Humiliated me in front of guests. Denied me food. Made me work until I collapsed. And I hated her. God, how I hated her. I swore that if I ever had power, I would never be like her. What happened? I met Adeyemi. He was visiting the house on business. He was kind to me, the only person who saw me as human. We fell in love, secret at first, then not so secret. When they found out, the wife nearly destroyed me. But Adeyemi married me anyway." Rose's laugh was hollow. "And I became her. Everything I hated, everything I swore I'd never be, I became it." "Why?" Naomi asked softly. "Because hurt people," Rose whispered. "Because somewhere along the way I started believing what she told me, that I was nothing, that my past defined me, that I'd never be good enough. And the only way I could feel powerful was to make someone else feel powerless." She turned to look at Naomi directly, tears still streaming down her perfect face. "You remind me of who I was," she said. "Strong without being hard. Enduring without becoming bitter. And I wanted to break that in you because I can't stand to see it. Because it reminds me of what I lost." Naomi felt something shift in her understanding. The monster had a face, a story, a wound. It didn't excuse the cruelty, but it explained it. "Why do you stay?" Rose asked, echoing the question she'd asked before, but this time with genuine curiosity rather than cruelty. "Because my daughter needs me too," Naomi said. "Because every day I survive is another day closer to saving her. Because I don't have the luxury of breaking. Even when I took your phone. Even when I stopped you from seeing her. Even then." Rose closed her eyes. "You're stronger than I ever was." "No," Naomi said. "I'm just a mother. We do impossible things when we have to." They sat there until the first light of dawn touched the windows. Two women from different worlds, bound by suffering, one inflicting it, one enduring it, both trapped in their own ways. Finally, Rose stood, smoothed her dress with shaking hands, and looked down at Naomi. "Go back to bed," she said, but her voice was different, tired, empty of venom. "You have the day off tomorrow. And your phone." She pulled it from her pocket and set it on the floor between them. "Call your daughter." Then she walked away, leaving Naomi alone with the sunrise and the impossible weight of understanding. The phone call lasted 47 minutes, and Naomi cried through all of it. Deborah's voice was small but brave. "Mama? Is it really you?" "Yes, baby. Yes, it's really me. I'm so sorry I haven't called. The nurses said you were working very hard so I can get better." Deborah paused. "Are you still working hard, Mama?" "Yes, baby. But I'm going to come see you very soon. I promise." "Okay." A pause, then, "Mama? There's a girl here who doesn't have a mama anymore. Hers died. I told her my mama is very strong and won't die because she fights very hard. Is that true?" Naomi pressed her hand over her mouth, holding back a sob. "That's true, my love. Mama fights very hard. For you." After they hung up, Naomi sat in her small room and let herself fall apart, just for a little while. Then she washed her face, straightened her uniform, and prepared for whatever came next. What came next was silence. Rose didn't emerge from her room all day. Grace whispered that she'd heard the mistress crying through the night, that Mr. Adeyemi had left early for a business trip and wouldn't return for a week. Naomi used her day off to visit Deborah. The hospital was chaos, understaffed and overwhelmed, but her daughter's face when she walked through the door made every moment of the past 17 days worth it. "Mama!" Deborah launched herself from the bed, tubes and all, into Naomi's arms. They held each other for a long time. Naomi breathed in her daughter's scent, hospital soap and medication, and underneath it all, that sweet smell that was uniquely Deborah. Her baby. Her reason for everything. The doctor found her in the hallway afterward. "Mrs. Okafor, we need to discuss Deborah's surgery. The wait list is long, and without the funds secured soon." He was kind but firm. The message was clear, time was running out. "How long do we have?" 3 months. Maybe 4 if she stays stable. But we need to schedule the surgery and secure payment at least a month in advance. 3 months. $3.5 million. Naomi did the math in her head. At her current salary, working without any deductions, she might save $1.2 million in that time. Not even half of what she needed. She returned to the mansion that evening feeling the weight of impossible mathematics. But when she entered through the service door, Grace was waiting with a strange expression on her face. "She wants to see you," Grace said. "In the study. Now." Naomi's heart sank. The day off had been too good to be true. Rose had simply been gathering her strength for a new attack. She walked to the study with her armor back in place, ready for whatever came next. Rose sat behind the massive mahogany desk, looking smaller somehow despite the power of her position. She'd clearly been crying, her eyes were red, her face pale. No makeup, no armor of her own. "Sit," she said quietly. Naomi sat. For a long moment, Rose just looked at her, and Naomi saw something she'd never seen before in those cold eyes: shame. "I called the hospital today," Rose said finally. "The university teaching hospital in Suralire. Spoke to Deborah's doctor." Naomi's blood went cold. "Ma'am." "He told me about the surgery. The timeline. The cost." Rose's hands were clasped tightly on the desk. "He also told me that you've been sending every kobo you earn to cover her current treatment. That you haven't eaten in the hospital cafeteria once because you're saving the money. That you've been sleeping in the waiting room on your visits instead of getting a hotel because the 3,000 Nigerian nairas could go toward medication." Naomi stayed silent, unsure where this was going. "I also learned," Rose continued, her voice getting quieter, "that Deborah tells everyone in the children's ward about her mother. About how strong you are. How you never give up. How you're her hero." Rose's voice cracked. "She brags about you, Naomi. Even though you can barely visit, even though this disease is stealing her childhood, she brags about her mother's strength." Tears were flowing freely down Rose's face now. "I have taken from you," she whispered, "your time, your dignity, your chance to be with your daughter when she needs you most. I have been cruel in ways that I—" She shook her head. "There's no excuse. There's no making it right. But I can try to make one thing right." She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. "This is a letter of sponsorship for Deborah's surgery. Full amount, to be paid directly to the hospital. Surgery scheduled for 2 weeks from now with Dr. Adel Ik, the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in Nigeria." Naomi stared at the folder, unable to process what she was hearing. "I don't understand." "I'm paying for your daughter's surgery," Rose said clearly. "All of it. The surgery, the recovery, the follow-up care. Everything." The room spun. Naomi reached for the folder with shaking hands, opened it, saw the official letter on hospital letterhead. Saw the amount, 3,500,000 Nigerian nairas. Saw, paid in full, stamped across the top. "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Because you showed me who I used to be," Rose said. "Because you endured things that would have broken most people, and you did it with a grace I can't comprehend. Because you're the mother I wish I'd had. Because—" She took a shaky breath. "Because I need to start becoming someone I can live with again, and this is where I start." Naomi couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The folder trembled in her hands. "This doesn't fix what I've done to you," Rose continued. "It doesn't erase the cruelty. But maybe it saves one good thing. One innocent child who deserves better than the hand she's been dealt." "I don't." Naomi tried to form words. "I can't repay." "I don't want repayment," Rose said firmly. "I want you to be with your daughter. I want you to stop killing yourself in this house while she's in that hospital. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take leave, effective immediately. Paid leave. You're going to be with Deborah for her surgery and recovery. And when you're ready to come back, if you're willing to come back, we'll discuss a different arrangement. Different how? No more cruelty. No more impossible tasks. You'll work as part of the household staff with the same respect Grace and Mama Nkechi receive. Fair hours, fair treatment, your phone whenever you need it. And double salary. Rose's hands were still shaking. I can't undo what I've done. But I can stop doing it. Naomi sat there, the folder in her hands, and felt 17 days of held-back tears finally break through. She cried for Deborah, for the miracle of this moment, for the weight of fear finally lifting. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Rose stood, moved around the desk. For a moment, Naomi thought she might offer a hug, but Rose stopped short, respecting the distance her cruelty had created. Thank you, Rose said softly, for showing me that strength doesn't have to destroy. That endurance doesn't require cruelty. That, she paused, that I could still become better. The surgery took place on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks later. Naomi sat in the waiting room, Grace beside her holding her hand. Mama Nkechi had sent food, for strength, she'd said. Joseph, the security guard, had driven them to the hospital himself, refusing payment. And Rose had come too. She sat apart from the others, dressed simply for once, no makeup, no armor. Just a woman trying to support another woman through the hardest day of her life. When the surgeon emerged 6 hours later, smiling, Naomi collapsed into Grace's arms, sobbing with relief. The surgery was successful. Deborah is stable. She's going to be fine. Later, when Naomi was allowed into recovery, she stood beside her daughter's bed and watched her sleep. Deborah's chest rose and fell with steady, healthy breaths. Her small hand was warm in Naomi's. You did it, baby, Naomi whispered. You fought so hard and you did it. Behind her, Rose stood in the doorway watching. When Naomi noticed her, Rose started to leave, but Naomi stopped her. Stay, she said. Please. Rose moved into the room slowly, approaching the bed like she was approaching something sacred. She's beautiful, Rose said softly, looking at Deborah's peaceful face. She is, Naomi agreed. And she's a fighter. Just like her mama. Just like both her mamas, Rose said, and the word, mama, hung in the air with new meaning. Not biological, but earned through the strange, painful journey they'd walked together. Naomi understood then that Rose's transformation wasn't complete. Healing never was. But it had begun, and that was something. Come back, Rose said quietly. When you're ready. Not as a maid. As. She struggled for the word. As family. We need you. I need you. Naomi looked at her daughter, then at Rose. I'll think about it, she said. 6 weeks later, Naomi returned to the mansion on Banana Island. But everything was different. Rose greeted her at the door herself, genuine warmth in her smile. The staff, all of them, welcomed her like a hero returning from war. Grace hugged her tight. Mama Nkechi had prepared a feast. Even Mr. Adeyemi, who Naomi had barely seen during her first stint, shook her hand and told her, You changed this house. Thank you. Her room was no longer the small space at the end of the hall. Rose had given her a proper bedroom on the second floor, with windows overlooking the garden and enough space for Deborah to visit and stay. And her role had changed. She was now Rose's personal assistant and household coordinator, managing schedules, organizing events, acting as a bridge between Rose and the staff. The cruelty was gone, replaced by mutual respect. But the most profound change was in Rose herself. She'd started therapy, facing the trauma that had turned her into a monster. She'd apologized to the staff, real apologies, with accountability and changed behavior to back them up. She'd begun volunteering at Deborah's hospital, reading to children in the pediatric ward. The transformation wasn't perfect. Some days Rose struggled, old patterns trying to resurface. But when they did, she'd catch herself, apologize, and try again. And Naomi was there through it all, not as a victim, not as a target, but as a steady presence who'd seen Rose at her worst and still believed she could be better. 3 months after Naomi's return, Deborah came to visit the mansion for a weekend. She ran through the gardens, laughed in the big house, and charmed everyone she met. Rose sat with Naomi on the terrace, watching Deborah play with Grace's grandchildren. I was thinking, Rose said carefully, about funding a charity. For families like yours, parents who are working hard but can't afford medical care for their children. Would you help me run it? Naomi looked at her, saw the genuine hope in Rose's eyes. Yes, she said. I would. And maybe... Rose hesitated. Maybe you could teach me how to be strong without being cruel. How to endure without becoming bitter. How to... She gestured helplessly. How to be better. You're already becoming better, Naomi said gently. Every day you choose to be different, you're becoming better. Rose's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve your kindness. Probably not, Naomi agreed, then smiled. But I'm giving it anyway. Because that's what healing looks like. We all deserve a chance to become better than our worst moments. They sat together as the sun set over Lagos, two women who'd walked through fire and come out transformed. The mansion that had once broken 23 women had finally been broken itself, broken open, its cruelty exposed and replaced with something harder to maintain but infinitely more valuable. Compassion. Understanding. Deborah ran up to them, out of breath and glowing with health. Mama. Auntie Rose. Come see the flowers we found. Auntie Rose. The title made Rose's breath catch. Coming, sweetheart, she said, and let Deborah pull her toward the garden. Naomi watched them go, her heart full. She thought about the woman she'd been when she first walked through those golden gates, desperate, exhausted, armed with nothing but love for her daughter. She was still that woman. But now she was also more. She was a mother who'd saved her daughter. A woman who'd endured the unendurable. A force that had transformed cruelty into kindness. And most importantly, she was proof that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is stay. To endure. To survive. And in surviving, to teach others how to heal. The charity gala was held in the mansion's grand ballroom, transformed from a cold display of wealth into a warm celebration of healing. 200 guests filled the space, doctors, donors, families who'd been helped by the new foundation, Deborah's Heart, named for the little girl who'd inspired it all. Naomi stood at the podium in an elegant dress Rose had bought her, and she'd initially refused, then accepted when Rose explained it wasn't charity, it was respect. 6 months ago, Naomi said to the crowd, my daughter was dying, and I was desperate. I took a job that seemed impossible, worked for someone I couldn't understand, and survived through sheer necessity. She found Rose in the crowd, sitting at a table with Mr. Adeyemi, Grace, Mama Nkechi, and Deborah. But what I learned was this: hurt people, and healed people heal people. The woman who once caused me pain now stands beside me in trying to prevent pain for others. And that transformation, that choice to change, is the real miracle. The room erupted in applause. Later, when the formal program ended and guests mingled, Naomi found Rose on the terrace, staring out at the lit gardens. You did good tonight, Naomi said, joining her. We did good, Rose corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You could have, Naomi said. You just wouldn't have. Rose laughed, the sound genuine and light. True. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights reflect off the lagoon. Do you forgive me? Rose asked quietly. For what I did to you? Naomi considered the question carefully. I'm working on it, she said honestly. Some days are easier than others. But I see who you're becoming and that helps. That's fair. Rose nodded. I'm working on forgiving myself too. Also hard. It should be hard, Naomi said. Easy forgiveness is cheap. The hard kind, the kind that requires real change, that's what matters. Deborah ran up then, breathless and happy, followed by Grace's grandchildren. Mama, Auntie Rose, they want to show us the fountain lights. Rose smiled and held out her hand. Then let's go see them. As they walked back toward the party, Naomi felt a peace she'd never expected to find in this house. The mansion that had once been a prison had become a home. The woman who'd once been a monster had become a friend, complicated, flawed, but genuinely trying. And Naomi, who'd arrived with nothing but desperation and love, had discovered her own power. Not the power to fight back. Not the power to destroy. But the power to endure, to transform, and to forgive. The hardest powers of all. And the most valuable. What would you have done in Naomi's shoes? Would you have stayed through 17 days of cruelty, separation from your dying child, and humiliation that would break most people? Or would you have walked away? This story reminds us that strength doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it's not about fighting back, it's about enduring. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stay when every fiber of our being wants to run. And sometimes the most powerful act of all is showing someone their own reflection until they're forced to change. If this story made your blood boil, if it made you think about the people in your own life who've endured impossible situations, if it restored your faith that even the cruelest hearts can be transformed, I need you to do something right now. Drop a like on this video if you believe that healing is possible, even in the darkest situations. That gesture tells YouTube to share this story with others who need to hear it. Comment below with "Stay strong" if you've ever had to endure something impossible for someone you love. Let's build a community of survivors, of fighters, of people who refuse to break. Read through the comments, you'll find your tribe there. People who understand. People who've walked similar paths. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because I'm committed to bringing you more stories like this. Real stories about real courage. Next week, I'm bringing you another story that will shake you to your core, about a security guard who exposed a conspiracy in a corporate empire, and how one small act of integrity brought down an entire house of cards. You won't want to miss it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe they're going through their own impossible situation. Maybe they need to be reminded that endurance is a superpower. Maybe they're the ones who need to change, and this story could be their wake-up call. We're building something bigger than just a channel here. We're building a community of people who believe in justice, in transformation, in the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Don't just watch these stories, be part of the movement. Comment right now, what's one impossible thing you've endured? What kept you going? Your story matters. Your strength matters. And someone reading your comment might be the person who needs to hear they're not alone. Hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. And let's keep proving that the human spirit is stronger than any cruelty, any obstacle, any impossible situation. Because stories like Naomi's, they're not just entertainment. They're proof that we can all become better than our worst moments. That healing is always possible. And that sometimes, the quietest people in the room are the strongest. Justice isn't just served, it's earned through endurance, compassion, and the courage to stay. Now go share this story. Someone needs it today.